Okay, I'm Jean-Pierre Lehmann. I'm a professor of international political economy at IMD in Lausanne, Switzerland, and I'm the founding director of the Evian Group. The meeting in Toronto went extremely well, as had the previous meeting. I think there's a very, very interesting collection of individuals who bring a lot to each other in terms of cross-fertilization of ideas, and at the same time there's a very dynamic atmosphere of camaraderie. So I would say it's very positive, constructive. We have a very good chair in the person of former Minister Pierre Pettigrew. So I'm quite confident that the Commission will have the ability to come up with some recommendations that are both imaginative, courageous, and implementable. I think the very important point that needs to be stressed, and you know, people really need to think about this, we are going, if you think of the last dozen years or so, we have undergone such amazing change. I mean, amazing change. One could start thinking in terms of the rise of China, the development of technologies which are having a huge impact on absolutely everything, the expansion of the European Union, the fall of the Berlin Wall, etc., etc., etc. So the world is a dramatically different place than what it was a decade or so ago. And this is very exciting, and it gives a lot of opportunities. I mean, they think that, for example, the opening of the Chinese market is having a huge beneficial impact on the world economy overall. But at the same time, when you have this degree of turbulence, and we have a new players, and a huge new player like China in particular, this invariably results in a good degree of turbulence, a degree of tension, a degree of rivalry between old players, new players, and so on. And therefore it's in that context that the institutions that exist, which can serve to provide the foundations to the world economy, that can provide the framework, that can provide above all the rule of law, so that you know, in case we go through a difficult period, which at some stage or another we're bound to, that we're going to find that we're not lacking in both the letter and spirit of a proper institutional framework with respect for the rule of law. Part of the problem is to think in terms of countries losing. I don't think any country needs to lose. You know, Charles Darwin made the point that said when you find periods of profound change, he says it's not necessarily the strongest or the most intelligent who survive, but those who are most adaptive to change, who adapt. So no country needs to lose. What that will do is that sectors, unless they adjust, modernize to the new challenges that are coming about, yes, they will lose. I mean, we can use a very easy example, textiles and garment. Textiles and garment is a sector in which it is extremely difficult for the so-called old economic powers, the European countries, United States, Canada, and so on, to be able to continue competing, given the fact that this is an area which depends quite a lot on the intensivity of labor, and labor rates in China, Vietnam, and other countries are very, very, very low. So, you know, what you need to do in that context is to think in terms of what's your value proposition? How can you go on being a player in a particular sector, but adjusting to the forces of competition that you have? And this is where technology is very important. And if you look at the example of Europe, basically we have a divide that the south of Europe, France, Portugal, Spain, these countries, Italy, have sought to hold on, saying, you know, we're staying in the textiles garment industry, and therefore what we want to do is to keep the Chinese products out. Whereas in the northern countries, Finland, Sweden, Netherlands, and so on, to a certain extent Germany, they've moved on. They're outsourcing, they're making their production now in cheap labor countries, but they're creating value through very advanced systems of retailing, of design, and so on. So that's what you want, is a sort of competitive dynamic that is going to ultimately provide the benefits to the majority of the people. Some people will definitely lose out. They must be treated in a humane way and given the prospects, the possibilities either of retraining in order to be able to rejoin in the competitive environment, or you know, if they're too old or whatever, to ensure that they can have a comfortable retirement. So you need to have to nurture an environment which is both dynamic and humane at the same time. And that's difficult. I admit it's very difficult. The institution of the multilateral trading system, and let me distinguish a bit right now between the institution of multilateral trading and the organization that is the WTO. First, let me talk about the institution. The institution of the multilateral trading system was set up after World War II because of the chaos that had existed in the 20s and 30s, or the 30s rather, and 40s, when countries engaged in trade warfare and all the rest of it. And there was no system, there was no rule of law. Insofar as the international market was concerned. So you could do anything, and people did anything, and this led to immense amount of rivalry, tensions, and so on. Therefore, once the GATT, as it was called before the WTO, was established, above all, the most important principle was to establish a rules-based system. Okay, so that you don't get anarchy, so that there are certain rules that must be adhered to. The second major principle was that it was going to be a system that was multilateral. In other words, that all of the members would benefit or benefit from the same advantages, pay the same costs. And this was based on an absolutely fundamental principle, which is one of the greatest innovations in institution making in the world, called the principle of non-discrimination. Okay? And thirdly, it was seen that in order to achieve a greater degree of welfare and wealth in the world economy, it was important to go through trade liberalization. But I do want to insist upon the fact that I think if people think in terms of the institution, or indeed the WTO, as above all, oh, it's a free trade organization. No, it's above all a fair trade organization. It's above all an organization that wants to put emphasis on the rules. Now, there is this is one of the institutions of the WTO, is that there is a dispute settlement unit that has been a mechanism that has been set up, which allows countries to bring before an appellate body a case where they feel that they have suffered from discrimination. I would say that this system, which is hardly 10 years old, is far from perfect, but it's going in the right direction. That is one of the aspects of the WTO that has actually been successful. In fact, one of the few, perhaps the only one. I'm not optimistic about the future because I think that we're going in the wrong direction. I think that you've got too much acceleration of forces that are dividing us rather than uniting us. And that's where I come back and I say leadership, 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 to recognize that we've got to put the sort of ship of global state back into with a strong rudder and in a direction that is going to be reassuring and that is going to take us to the port that we're hoping to get to.